you can find interesting patterns. In Barolo Cave, these are the gray bars. You have more skull remains than you do have in Sanctorus. In Sanctorus, you have more isolated teeth than you have in Barolo. So you have a different pattern here. But in general, you have the same type of global preservation and accumulation of the remains between the two sites. Whatever the bone is considered, except for vertebra, where you have actually a few in Sanctorus, but most of the remains are almost the same. What is interesting is that some of the remains, which are the carpal bones, so the bones of the hand, are almost always missing, just like the clavicles, but clavicles are fragile and do not preserve well. What is interesting is that carpal bones should preserve as well as tarsal bones, so bones from the feet. But what we observe is that you have quite a significant frequency of bones of the feet, and bones from the hand are usually missing. And from that, we wonder if the hands were brought back to the site or not, if it's a question of preservation or not. If it was a matter of preservation in the sites of Sanctorus and Barolo, then we should have the same pattern as we have for the bones of the feet. So it's not a matter of preservation. They should be preserved if they were there. So if they are not found now, it means that they were not brought back to the cave. So they went to the forest, they targeted the monkeys, and that they did not bring back the hands to the cave. So why that? Well, if you look at behavior of modern hunter-gatherers in Southeast Asia, for the one who targets monkeys, you will find that one of the easiest way to bring those cadavers back to their camp is to cut the hands and then with the skin to make a node on a stick, a wooden stick, and then to carry the individuals there, the cadavers, back to the cave. And we believe that's potentially what they used to do there in Barolo and Sanctorus for those Homo sapiens population. They targeted those monkeys, cut the hand, made a node with the skin, the extra skin, and then brought them back to the cave. That would explain this different pattern between bones from the hand and bones from the feet. Well, another possibility, but that is very unlikely, is that those monkeys were trapped and not targeted with arrows. If you trap them, monkey put the hand into the trap and then you cut the hand. That is very unlikely for the simple reason that these monkeys are vegetarian. They eat mostly leaves. So it is very unlikely to trap such type of primates eating on leaves. So most likely it's because they were cutting the hands to carry them back to the site. So just at looking at the preservation of the different bones, you can even know what strategies to bring them back to the cave. These were numbers. If you put that into graphics, that's what you obtain. This is for Sanctorus, and you can see what I just mentioned to you, that the hand bones are clearly missing compared to the feet bones, and that is not normal. What you can see there as well is that the best preserved part, the one in red, is the femur, the hind limb bone. And that is expected because it's a robust bone, and that's one of the bone that fuse early in the development of the individuals. And therefore, if it fuses early, it preserves better. So knowing that we had a natural population with mostly adults, it is expected to have more femurs. If you compare now with Barolo Cave, well, you have a different pattern. The forelimb is better preserved than the hind limb. You still have the missing carpal bones, so bones from the hand compared to bones from the feet. So same pattern with Sanctorus, but different patterns for other skeletal elements. For the rest of the skeleton, the forelimbs, so the humerus, the ulna, and the radius are better preserved than the hind limb. And that is quite surprising. Again, as I said, for Sanctorus, the femur should be better preserved. Remember, we had the same demographic profile in Barolo than in Sanctorus, so same strategies, mostly adults, so we should have the same skeletal parts. So why do we have more hind limb remains than forelimb remains than hind limb, sorry. Maybe one of the answer is related to the numbers you have put by Noel Amano here on this skeleton, that are the number of cut marks you do find on the bones. So in the different bone parts that have been recovered, you do find some cut marks, and most of those cut marks, you see the number of 122 are positioned near the elbow. So obviously you had a strong activity, human activity, during the butchery or something else when processing the carcasses of those monkeys in Barolo towards the forelimb. And this is confirmed with a more in detail look at those skeletal remains here at Barolo, again by Noel Amano, and where you can see that here on the humerus, you do have the best preserved parts, the most numerous parts preserved are the distal hand, so the elbow part, the elbow extremity, the elbow joint of the humerus. And that's where you have most of the cut marks, as you can see on the right side of this slide. Linked to this better preservation of the elbow, you have as well some same feature for the ulna and radius, where the proximal part, so the part of the ulna and radius that are joint of the elbow, are better preserved than the other extremity. And the reason for that is certainly directly related to what you have at the bottom there with the pictures, where you do have ulnas, just like there on the bottom left corner, where, see, that's the proximal part, so that's the elbow, and you see the bottom part has been shaped into a pointed object, and therefore you have an activity towards transforming those bones into pointed tools. So you have a industry tool set based on the bones of those monkeys in Barolo. And that is quite frequent. That would explain the different skeletal preservation in the site of Barolo. If you shape some of the bones into pointing tools, and mostly the ones related to the elbow, then you would expect a better preservation of these remains than the ones that have been shaped. They are not the only bones that have been shaped into pointing tools. You do have as well the fibula, so a bone from the hind limb that you have there on the right, that's the letter D. They have been shaped the same, and of which I've shown you picture already at the beginning of this seminar. So several types of bone have been shaped, but in Barolo, most of those bones are the run of the forelimb. So if I summarize, Sanctorus and Barolo, you have the same pattern. One species targeted over another, randomly targeted, so the same demographic profile, the same proportion of males and females in terms of statistics. But then when brought back to the site by the same method, a different activity. So in the area of the Gunungsewu, by the same time period, you can differentiate, maybe by the same human group, that we don't know, but at least different activity patterns. In Barolo, there was definitely a site, an occupation site, that was dedicated to transforming the bones of those hunting monkeys into pointed tools. What was the The purpose of those pointing tools, we don't know yet. It's quite difficult to know. Maybe they were used, for some of them, for hunting as well. Now comes the question, were those bones made out of monkeys used for hunting and for hunting more monkeys? That's the question. And we cannot answer that. But if it was the case, then you would have a circular economy fully around those monkeys. By Holocene time, so by 10,000 years ago, in the Gunung Sewu, those Homo sapiens population, you have an economy that is totally dedicated to hunting those monkeys and totally circular with those monkeys. So they not only made some projectiles, maybe, or at least some tools out of those skeleton, they also consume the skeleton, as we've seen with the cutting marks. So they consume the skeleton, they made some stone tools out of the skeletons of those monkeys, and you also have some of those individuals, of monkey individuals, that you find back, as I told you in the introduction, in the Homo sapiens burials. I've shown you some kept like 5 individuals that have been studied by Pasofwan. Here, another individual, the one of Sanctoros, Homo sapiens, that have been studied by Florent Detroit and Goodiman. And there, so it's a flexed burial. On the left, you have the lower jaw of this Homo sapiens. On the right, you have the feet. And there you find, pointed with the right arrows here, several remains of those monkeys, again, still the same species, those Lutung-Budeng, those colobs. You have faces, just like the one mentioned by Van Eekeren, and you have several, that's the other arrows, lower jaw, including a lower jaw of this monkey that is next to the human, the Homo sapiens lower jaw. Among those lower jaws, this is a detail of 2 fragments, probably from the same individual. On the right, you have the left side of a jaw. On the left, you have the right side of a jaw. And what is interesting, if you look at the teeth there, is that you have an abnormal wear pattern. So again, that's 2 pieces of probably the same individual that was found in the Homo sapiens burial of Sanctoros. And in this individual, you have an abnormal wear pattern. So what you have on the top right is the second molar and the last molar, so the wisdom tooth. And what you have on the left is same first, second, and third molar, from right to left. And the most worn tooth on each side of this lower jaw is the third molar. But remember the pattern I've shown you. The third molar, the one at the bottom there, is the last one to erupt. If it's the last one to erupt, it should be the least worn tooth in a tooth set, in a tooth row. That's the opposite we find here. The first and second molar are less worn here than are the third molars. This is abnormal. We should not find that. So we wonder how come you had this weird wear pattern. So for that, we decided to study the diet of those monkeys. Remember, I told you those monkeys are leaf eaters. They are really leaf eaters. I mean, they are so adapted to consuming leaves that they have a stomach that is comparable to the one of a cow for digesting this type of food. So if you take the teeth and you look at them under a microscope, just like the one you have on the table here, you can see the surface of the teeth with pits and striations. Usually pits correspond to consumption of foods, and striations, more you are striation, more you are leaf or grass eaters. So if you look at them under the microscope, these teeth, and you count the number of pits and striations, the proportion of pits and striations can tell you what type of food they were eating. That's basically what we did here. And we did the quite complex analysis here that I won't detail, and that we compared with the different comparative specimens we had for different categories. So frugivorous, so eating fruits, folivorous, so eating leaves, grazers, and mixed, so between eating half fruits, half leaves. And here what we found in red and shown with the red arrows are the fossils from Sanctoros, a few fossils from Sanctoros that we studied, the one from the burial. And you can see that these fossils cluster with the one in, mostly with the one in green, which are the fruit eaters. So the Lutumbudeng cluster, among other, with the Monyetkara. So the Trachypithecus, the colob, clusters with the macaques. Again, the fossils are colobs, they are leaf eaters, and they have a stomach that is dedicated to consuming high proportion of leaves. It is abnormal to find them eating on fruits. And if they eat too much fruit that is very acidic, probably that will cause them some troubles. So they cannot do that for a long time, most likely if they do not want to encounter any troubles. And in nature, if you have fruits, then you have leaves around. So in terms of environmental change, there's no reason for a shift from leaves to fruits, considering their specific stomach. So how come they shifted from leaves to fruits? Well, we believe, again, remember, these are individuals that are found in the burial, Homo sapiens burial, that we believe that this is the evidence that these individuals, these very individuals, were fed by the humans occupying Sanctoros. They were not feeding them with leaves, but with fruits. These are individuals you find in the burial, and is another lower jaw that you find in the burial, and you can see that it's almost an adult. The last molar is almost erupted. And you have something strange on this lower jaw. I guess that Passophone already noticed. You have no incisors at all. This is a abnormal individual, a pathological individual that was born with no incisors. And there's no space for the incisor. You can see that the two canines are close to each other and there's no space for the incisors. And yet these individuals reached almost adulthood. This is another individual found in the burial, and we believe that this was also fed by humans. So, if I summarize, you have a complex relationship. You have population in Sanctoros and in Baolo that used to go to the forest to hunt for primates, but not only for primates, for a very specific species, the colobs, the nice orange ones. Then they brought them back to the cave after cutting the hands, brought back to the cave. In Baolo, they consumed the meat, and with the bones, they made some pointing tools. In Sanctoros, they consumed the meat. They did make some pointing tools, but much less than they used to do in Baolo. So they ate the meat, they transformed the bones into pointing tools, and some of them were fed by humans. How come? If they brought them back dead, how come? Obviously, some were not brought back dead, but brought alive. And actually, this is a behavior that we know nowadays in some hunter-gatherer populations in Southeast Asia, but also in South America and in Africa. They hunt for some animals, not always primates, that also works for pigs. And sometimes they target a mother with a baby, because the mother with the baby will run away less easily than any other individuals. Of course, it wants to protect the offspring. And therefore, they easily target the mother, and they somehow feel guilty for the baby left there. And they bring back the baby to the camp and raise it as their own kid. This is not, how to say that? This is not growing individuals. We are not in the Neolithic population with domestication. we are still with hunter-gatherers, but we are somewhere in between hunting behavior and domestication. And we believe that's what you had in Sanctaurus. Most of the individuals were hunted, targeted for their meat and for transforming their bones into tools. Maybe those pointy tools were used as well to target more individuals. And some of them, most likely the babies, because here again, see, this is a sub-adult, it's not an adult yet, were brought back to the cave and raised as their own kids. And that's the one you find in the Homo sapiens burial. So you had a complex relationship at different stages, multi-stages, from food consumption to raw material for the tools until symbolic. That's what is summarized here. From the different patterns you have on the different bones, you can evidence that. You can see some cutting marks on this posterior part of a skull here on the top left, showing that they cut the head when they prepared them. Then they also cut the different joints. That's what you have with the femur, with the hind limb bone there on the top. They remove also the tendons. That's what you have with the tibia there, letter C. So they remove the tendons. So all the joints were removed. After skinning, of course, and evisceration, you had dismembering, disarticulation. And once you had the bones, some of them, not all of them, some of them were transformed into tools through polishing, for instance. And that's what is represented also at the bottom there. And some were also transformed, pierced into pendants. That's the case of the canine I've shown you in the introduction, and that is there on the top right corner. Whether those pointy tools were hafted or not, most likely some of them were. That's the work of Kasman Setiagama doing his S2. Some of them were hafted. And again, whether those hafted pointy tools were used as projectile to hunt more monkeys, that's a question. But then you would have a circular economy that is quite interesting. Just to conclude, this is Homo sapiens lower jaw from Braulo. This is Colob lower jaw from Braulo as well. This is a zoom on the vertical ramus of the two lower jaws. And you can see that both on the Homo sapiens lower jaw of Braulo and the Colob lower jaw of Braulo, you have the same cut marks for preparation of the skeletons. That's all I say. That's just my conclusion. Well, I just add one slide. You actually have the same pattern on here, this rodent. Well, there's no many ways to remove the head, to behead an individual. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tomohiko, for your presentation. Sebelum kita istirahat siang, ada yang mau ditanyakan? Mungkin dari teman-teman yang hadir di sini ataupun yang hadir via Zoom. Jika memang ingin bertanya, silakan langsung bertanya. Mungkin dari sini ada yang mau ditanyakan? Dari Zoom? Belum ada. Is there any cannibalism? Ada kannibalisme atau memang maksudnya dari slide terakhir atau memang karena preparasi aja, cultural, karena mungkin ada secondary burial or something like that?
Well, there's no many ways to prepare a skeleton. If you want to remove the joints, then you have to cut at the same position a human primate or a non-human primate. Cut mark doesn't mean cannibalism all the time. It can be preparation of the skeleton. In Guabraulo, you do have a secondary burial as well. So I won't say it's cannibalism.
Ada pertanyaan lagi? Silakan.
Sorry, Mas Thomas. There's any weapon for the hunting the macaque? Let's say projectile point or maybe rope with the stone to sling.
Well, what is interesting in the Gunung Sewu, but in general in most of Java actually, but Panton will contradict me with Guapawan, but is that for this time period, the stone tools are quite simple. Simple flakes, kind of exponent technology, yes. No much shaping of those flakes. And what is interesting is that it has been viewed by other prehistorians when working in Europe or in Africa that this was simple culture somehow. And indeed, from these simple flakes, it's quite difficult to identify some weapons or because they have not been shaped into specific tools like in other places in the world. What is interesting with the monkeys that we are from the same site is that obviously you are the complex world, very complex world and high developed cultures that you not always easily see with the stone tools by themselves, including in terms of projectiles. Obviously, you have some projectiles, whether these were weapons or not, that's unclear yet.
Ada pertanyaan lagi? Mungkin? Silahkan, Pak Aya.
Terima kasih. Sangat menarik ya. Maaf kalau pertanyaannya agak sedikit aneh. Eh, Berarti kalau dari penjelasan itu interaksinya lebih ke arah predasi ya antara human sama non primate non humannya itu antara makak atau colops. Kalau 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 kompetisi di antara keduanya, apakah ada bukti atau kompetisi antara makaka primate yang lain yang non human baik di Braholo atau Songthrus? Adakah?
Do you get the question?
What competition? Um, you do have in some forest of Java, so most of the forest of Java, you do have the two species. In some of the forests, they do overlap in terms of territory. I'm not aware of any competition between the two groups. When we published that at first, we had a response researcher who told us, but in Dieng Mountain Forest, there's one species, but not the other. Dieng Mountain Forest is a specific case. It has been modified through anthropogenic activities in recent times. So you do not have the two species for some specific reason, I believe. And actually, I believe that Dieng Mountain Forest cannot be a good example for prehistoric times. So for nowadays, in most of the untouched forests of Java, you do have the two groups. It doesn't mean that because they are in the same forest, their territory overlap. And whenever it overlaps, I'm not aware of any competition.
Oke, terima kasih.
Terima kasih. Ada pertanyaan lagi? Ada komentar dari Zoom, Mas Taufik. So based on ethnographic, monkeys sometimes has been used to collect some food also by human. Jadi untuk ambil buah dan segala rupa juga seperti itu. Ini ada pertanyaan, Mas Ford?
Terima kasih Thomas, presentasinya sangat menarik. Yang pertama, mengapa mereka memilih kolub daripada makak? Apakah ada alasan? Why they prefer to choose kolub compared to makak? Satu. Kemudian, apakah ada perbedaan berburu kolub dengan makak? Is there any specific difference how to hunt kolop atau makak?
Mungkin yang ketiga tadi ada. Sama dengan Taufik. Mengapa mereka memelihara baby kolop, membesarkannya? Terima kasih, teman-teman.
I have no idea. I was not there back then. Well, if you ask for my opinion, I find colobs more cute than macaques. They have this nice orange and nice hairs, but I don't know. And I've never tasted any of them, so I don't know if one tastes better than the other, but that could be a reason. I don't know. I have no idea. Well, actually, those colobs are not all orange. Orange are the young ones, and then they become black, right? They're the lutung hitam, yeah. But I guess that when they are orange, they are quite easy to see and to target in the green forest than the gray macaques. So maybe they are easier targets. I don't know. But I have no answer.
Terima kasih. Masih ada pertanyaan lagi? Or maybe because the macaque is more vicious than colobs? I don't know. I mean, they group in groups and very... Yeah. Probably. Mungkin ada... ada yang bertanya nih. Hello, my name is Miska. I'm from Gajah Mada University of Archaeology major. So the question is, why were animals used as burial supplies at that time? And where this animal are marker of their social status, that they were a hunter or something?
Well, animals used as burial supplies is quite common as early as burial are known. I mean, in Israel, in the earliest burials in the humanity, you already had some animal gifts, some offerings, and that persisted for long. I mean, in more recent burial historical time, you also had some offerings, so that's a common practice. I haven't studied that, but well, it's believed that some of those animals act as scientific term, psychopomp animals, which means animals that or symbols that brings the dead through the gateways, right, to the death. That could be the reason, and in many societies, it was the reason. Then you have to consider that with Neolithic times, so with domestication, you do have some burials as well of animals, just like we do nowadays for our pets. And actually, in the Philippines, you even have, on the island of Palawan, a burial of a macaque dating back to the Neolithic, along with the burial of a dog. So it's quite common.
Okay, thank you. Ada pertanyaan lagi dari teman-teman semua sebelum kita sudahi sesi pertama kita hari ini. Another question. Bagaimana kira-kira dengan interaksi dengan Pongo? Mengingat Pongo juga kadang ditemukan dalam data temuan arkeologi.
So there's no Pongo in the time of the Kepler layers in Java. There was Pongo before. In the Teos layer, there was Pongo in Java. If we compare with Borneo, where you do have Pongo and where you do have some nice sites as well, so such as Nia Cave, you do have Pongo hunting as well in Nia, but it's not the most common. And actually, primates are not the most common in Nia. Well, you definitely have subsistence strategies towards forest animals, so all type of primates, but not specifically towards primates, meaning that the best preserved, the most hunted species in Nia for the same period of time as the Gunung Sewu we discussed here were pigs, actually. But you do have primates, and among those primates, you do have Pongo, you have orangutan. What is interesting is that you also have, I didn't discuss that, but you also have some smaller primates in Nia, but also in the Gunung Sewu, And what is interesting is that these are nocturnal animals. So they were hunting on primates during day, but also during night times. So they were hunting basically anything they could find.
Ada pertanyaan lagi? Oh, I try to imagine how human try to hunt orangutan. That I'm just trying to imagine. It's quite big and strong, right? Yeah. Any question? Ada pertanyaan lagi nggak? Ada? Mangga loh. Ada Zoom? Silakan Pak Thomas Sutikna, bisa menyalakan mic dan mungkin videonya juga bisa. Monggo Pak D.
Okay, thank you, Pak Anton. Thank you, Injiko, for your nice presentation today. And sorry, I can turn on my video, Anton. Hello, can you hear me, Anton?
Ya, Pak D, mangga Pak D, monggo.
Yeah. Okay. Enjiko, thank you very much for your presentation. I just following questions. We know that monkey, in general, is quite agile in the forest. Rinsah itu agile ya. So it will be needing well preparation, including tools for hunt them in the wild. The question is there any idea in Jiko on how the people in the past hunting monkey, or if any evidence during your study on tools or bones on macaque or general monkey from bones that show indication of hunted or killed by human in the past? And second, is there any further or detailed analysis related with the tools like bone point that made of the monkey, like including the double point? That's very strange according to me. There is no clear description, no clear description, but what is the tools used in the past, like at a small or tiny double point or single point that normally we found a lot in Gunung Sewarea, including Songtros, Babraholo, and also Songgupo. This is my question, Injiko, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Thomas. So for the first question, finding on the bones evidences of hunting is quite difficult. You have to consider that you have the thickness of the muscles that cover the bones and that prevents any clear evidences left on bones for hunting, at least with projectiles. We don't even know if they were using poison or not, that we have no clues on that. So all the marks we find on the bones are related to the way they processed the cadavers, but not the way they hunted them. Regarding the pointing tools, so they are definitely highly shaped tools, mostly through polishing, but not only. You have different methods. Kasman Setiagama studied and described that very well. Ryan Rabbit as well. And I guess that just like for stone tools, for the longest time, we used to give names to stone artifacts, and then realized that thanks to use-where analysis, right, Anton, the meaning of the artifact was not the tool we expected. So the same for the bone tools, and I'm not aware of any advanced use-where analysis on those bone tools. I'm not even sure that it's really feasible, but maybe one day.
Terima kasih. Ya mungkin suatu saat ada yang berniat dan rigorous study sih untuk bone tools untuk mengetahui apa yang benar digunakan sebagai alat selain karena selama ini kan kita reverse ke tipologi. Tipologi tidak selamanya reverse ke penggunaan aslinya seperti itu. Itu mungkin nanti approach ke user seperti itu. Ada lagi pertanyaan? Oh, Mbak Inge, silakan Mbak Inge. Apa kabar Mbak Inge? Semoga sehat selalu. Bisa langsung bertanya Mbak Inge. Halo? Ya, bisa dinyalakan mic-nya Mbak. Oke.
Sorry. Kedengaran suara saya? Okay. My question is still related to Thomas Sutikna's question. I'm focusing on the cut marks. How? I mean, how we study the cut marks and to conclude it that the cut marks are resulted by human activity. Is it possible that the cut marks are there caused by other animals, such as rodents? Because we know that rodents need to sharpen their teeth, and they need, among others, or they use, among others, bones. That's the question. Thank you.
Depending on the state of preservation of the bone you study, sometimes you cannot say whether it was animal or human. But it's also related to the age of the fossils and what it injured. But in this case, it's quite straightforward. We do have descriptive methods, qualitative methods, to discriminate between marks left at the surface on the bone by teeth of animals, such as rodents, but also any carnivores, and made by stone tools. If you look at the marks under a microscope, the marks made by rodents will be wide.
Yeah.
In profile, they would have a U shape.
Yes.
So symmetrical. While, and the same for carnivores. And if they are made by artifacts, stone tools by humans, they would be asymmetrical in V shape and a different angle, the slope on each side of the V shape, the V-shape section. Then at the bottom of the striation, if made by stone tools, you would have some striations as well. Just like this one. You would have some striations as well. And these striations are directly related to the irregularity of the cutting edge of the stone tool. And the cutting edge of the stone tool, being irregular, will leave some striations at the bottom of the cut mark. Then on the sides of the cut mark, you would have some bone removal as well that are related to the use of stone tools. So we do have several clues, and some others I have mentioned, like feathers, etc., that can help you to identify and to discriminate mark made by a stone tool from mark by a tooth, rodent, carnivore, or even human tooth, by the way. And another evidence with no need of microscope is the one you have here. On the femur here, on the hind limb, so the bone in the middle here, you have what look like several striations. This is not made by different actions of a stone tool, but just one. And one stone tool would leave several parallel striations here. This is very common. And from this, you cannot mistake with any rodent teeth. And rodent teeth, so this means rodent incisors. They have two incisors, and you would have two parallel marks, large, etc. So you cannot mistake them. And they won't be placed at the same position. That's the last point. If anthropogenic, if human, then you would have the position of the cut marks that would be important. And that's exactly what you have represented here. If rodent, it would be on any extremities. If human, then you would have a specific placement because there's a strategy behind that. You want to disarticulate, you want to eviscerate, you want to skin. And different, based on the position of the marks, you can even know what type of activity. If it's for skinning, then you would find cutting marks on the extremity of the legs, so the hands and the feet. If it's for disarticulation, you find on the joint, every joint, or beheading, etc. So the placement of the mark is also important to know if it's random, let's say natural rodent teeth or carnivores, or human. Carnivores mostly make their teeth consume the spongy bones, so the extremities. So here we do have marks as well on the shaft of the bones, so in the middle part of the bones. This is clearly human. Carnivores won't do that, or barely do that, not with such repeatability.
Terima kasih. Cukup Mbak Inge atau mungkin pertanyaan
Satu
lanjutan?
lagi boleh ya. So can we conclude that if the activity is for disarticulating the bones, so the marks will be on the edge. I'm sorry, the edge of or di ujung tulang, apa itu istilahnya saya lupa.
The extremities, yes.
Yes, the extremities. While how about the fleshing? If I'm not wrong with the term, when human took off the flesh from the bones, will there also cut marks left on the on the bones?
Yes, so for skinning, it
Yeah,
would be
no, not skinning.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean the flesh.
Yeah, yes. So for skinning, it will be on the hands and feet, and then you remove the skin. For disarticulation, it will be near the joint, so the extremities. For defleshing, it will be in the shaft, in the middle of the bones, because you have no muscle attachment on the extremity, except a few, like the biceps, the humeral biceps, but very few, and for some tendons. But for the most of the muscle, at least the inner layer of muscles, flesh, is attached to the shaft of the bones. So if you find cut marks on the shaft, in the middle of the bone, then it is for defleshing.
Okay, and the amounts of the cut marks should be a lot, or one, for example, one cut marks or two is enough to conclude the activity.
It depends on the skill of the butcher. If it's a good butcher, he will leave no cut marks at all.
Okay. Thank you.
Ini ada pertanyaan lagi dari teman-teman yang berada di Zoom atau mungkin yang berada di sini. Mas Sofwan, silakan.
Tanya lagi, Thomas. Silakan teman-teman yang ada. Thomas Sutikna ya. Bukan Thomas Sutikna, Thomas Injiko. Teman-teman silakan kalau sambil ngopi, sambil snack, silakan ambil sendiri. Apa tadi pertanyaannya, lupa. Setelah ini ada Pak Thomas Sutikna juga. Mas Thomas, Ini menarik karena ada indikasi pemeliharaan hewan sebelum Neolitik ya, pada periode Neolitik. Yang menarik mungkin lebih teknis. Mengapa mereka sepertinya nampaknya meremove incisor dan tetap mempertahankan canine, padahal canine yang berbahaya, sedangkan incisor tidak. Itu yang pertama. Why they preserve the canine but they remove the incisor? It's interesting because canine more dangerous compared to incisor. That's my first question. And the second one, do you have any idea about the food they give to the columbine, or the Cercopithecidae? It's interesting because in the third molar there is bruxism, and yes, more the attrition level more intensive. Do you have any idea about what kind of food? Maybe hard food, maybe they don't give leaf, but the other food. Ya, thank you, Mas Thomas. Apa makanannya kira-kira?
So indeed, they used a few canines, not a lot, to transform them into pendants. For the incisor, sorry, I wasn't clear. They did not remove them, just like Neolithic human population used to do for themselves. It's not ablation. It's the incisor were not there. The individual was not born with incisor. It's a pathology. It's not anthropogenic activity. So they did not touch, the human population did not touch the incisor of the monkeys. It's just that on this specific individual, the incisors were not there. Okay, it's a pathological one. As for bruxism, that's a very sharp comment. So we are not dealing with Neolithic population. They are not domesticating the animals. But we believe that some of them were kept as pets somehow. They did not control the reproduction of those individuals, but they were kept as pets. If you go into collections in museums, you can see that monkeys that were into cages into those museums have weird shaped bones, long bones. The long bones are totally curved. And that is the evidence that those monkeys were limited in their movements. We looked at that in Sanctoros and Barolo. We didn't see any weirdly shaped, curved long bones. So they were kept as pets, but not into cages, most likely, but maybe with a rope. What we know as well is that monkeys that are kept in laboratories for medical experiments, and they are highly stressed and they do develop bruxism, just like you said. So you do have bruxism, stress, related to such a close relationship between human and monkeys. Was this bruxism or not? I don't know, could be. So that's why I say it's very sharp comment.
Pertanyaan berikutnya ada Pak Thomas, mungkin sudah raise hand di Zoom ya. Ada pertanyaan lagi Pak Thomas, Pak Ade?
Masih bisa? Halo?
Ya, monggo.
Halo?
Ya Pak, monggo.
Oh, silakan. Terima kasih Pak Thomas. Ini sama-sama Thomas ini.
Sama-sama.
Thank you, Jiko, because I also working in the Gunung area as well, including Braholo and also in Flores. And all of the taxonomical aspect is really very clear for your works, including cut marks, etc., and as well as the taxonomical aspect. But seems that the way how the people in the past hunt monkey is still elusive according to me. And then it is good for our future research, I think. And based on the ethnographical data, many tribes use blue pipe to hunt monkey. It is maybe in Kalimantan and South America as well. If we inference to the past activities, then according to me, it is worth to do residue analysis maybe on small tools, such as bone points in the near future, so that there's not question in GICO. Maybe in the future we can work together in archaeology to refine how the people in the past, because from the taphonomical aspect, like including the cut mark, you already well done to do analysis on that. But maybe we need to focus also on the how the people prepare their tools, preparing their strategy, how to hunt the wild monkey in the forest. So maybe in the future, it is possible we can include the analysis on residue for the small tools like the bone points. Maybe they use the bone point and as a blow pipes like in Kalimantan and Dayak, or in what do you call this, in South America. Do you think it is possible to do this, Pak Injigo? And maybe Anton also already suggests this kind of analysis in the future. Thank you, Pak Anton.
Thank you, Pak Thomas, for your comments. Yeah, I fully agree. I did not mention blowpipes, but that's the case indeed. In the Punan or Borneo, indeed, who hunt on monkeys, they do use blowpipes, so it's quite common. I believe that they somehow used poison, so indeed, hopefully, residue analysis could allow us to solve that. Preservation of the bone is quite good. Chemical preservation of the bone is not that good in the Gunung Sewu. You have a lot of water infiltration with a lot of concretions. And I know that collagen does not preserve that well in the Gunung Sewu, at least. And therefore, I don't know the impact it would have on residue, on those chemicals, but hopefully, yes. Pantan wanted to answer.
Why? Saya rasa memang harus ada pendekatan-pendekatan lagi, khususnya untuk kalau memang untuk mampu mengetahui tinggalan-tinggalan yang ditemukan di situs arkeologi, apakah dia digunakan sebagai anak panah atau mungkin sebagai blowpipe dan segala rupa. Memang it's a little bit long shot, karena walaupun ada indikasi-indikasi untuk mengetahui bahwa memang dia digunakan sebagai projectile, khususnya kita bisa mengetahui bahwa ada beberapa, khususnya di alat batu yang paling mudah ya, karena kalau alat tulang memang kita harus berpikir untuk masalah preservasi dan yang lain tafonomi, dan itu memang akan sangat sulit. Walaupun mungkin dilakukan, tapi akan sedikit lebih sulit jika dibandingkan dengan alat batu yang memang dia preservasinya lebih tahan lama. Untuk impact fracture, paling gampang sih kalau kita mau mengetahui bahwa itu digunakan sebagai projectile, kita akan menemukan ada beberapa indikasi impact fracture di alat batunya, meskipun walaupun sebagian besar selama ini kita akan melihat bahwa ini digunakan sebagai projectile dari morfologi, dari bentuknya, akan tetapi juga tetap bentuk tidak, seperti yang dikatakan sebelumnya, bentuk tidak menentukan bahwa memang benar digunakan sebagai apa yang kita pikirkan dari bentuknya. Jadi dari user memang harus diketahui dengan yakin sebagai justifikasi bahwa dia digunakan sebagai katakanlah projectile dari impact fractures. Jadi ada beberapa kriteria impact fractures seperti apa. Itu sih ya, saya rasa ya. Untuk alat tulang mungkin memang paling menarik, dan satu hal yang harus garis bawahi adalah untuk projectile sendiri itu sebagian besar jarang ditemukan di bekas-bekas projectile ya, apakah yang sudah alat batu atau alat tulang yang digunakan sebagai projectile yang punya impact fractures sangat jarang ditemukan di gua atau di tempat mereka mengolahnya. Karena kalau sebagian besar kalau memang itu digunakan dan mereka punya impact fractures, itu ada di somewhere out there saat mereka berburu, dan mereka nggak akan bawa kembali ke gua. Jadi kalau memang persentasenya sedikit, tapi tidak menutup kemungkinan kita kadang-kala menemukan bukti-bukti penggunaan alat batu atau alat tulang yang digunakan sebagai projectile di sites yang kita menemukan juga teman-teman arkeologi lainnya. Seperti itu sih mungkin ya. Ada pertanyaan lagi? Kalau tidak ada, saya akan mengakhiri sesi pagi kita. Kita akan kembali mungkin sekitar 12:30 atau jam 1. 12:30 kita akan kembali lagi. Kita akan mencoba untuk melihat beberapa koleksi secara langsung. Jadi mohon maaf yang datang via Zoom atau YouTube, tapi mungkin yang hadir di sini bisa langsung melihat dan secara langsung seperti apa sih tinggalan-tinggalan koleksi yang kita punya untuk mekaka dan beberapa alat-alat tulang yang kita bisa peragakan di sini. Itu saja dari saya. Terima kasih banyak. Sampai ketemu lagi nanti di 12:30, 12:30. Baik, terima kasih. Oke, cek. Emang nggak mati? Emang nggak ada suara? Emang nggak ada? Oh, cek, cek, cek. Oke, selamat datang kembali di sesi workshop kita kali ini. Selamat datang juga buat yang baru hadir di ruangan ini dari mahasiswa Universitas Indonesia. Mudah-mudahan kalian tidak ya jump in aja ya langsung. Kita sesi 2 akan langsung kita melihat-lihat koleksi dan bagaimana indikasi-indikasi antrofik dari beberapa tinggalan koleksi di Mekaka yang kita punya di sini. Jadi nanti mungkin Mas Toma langsung bisa menjelaskan sedikit bagian-bagian anatominya dari Mekaka dan apa saja indikasi-indikasi pengerjaan yang dilakukan oleh manusia, modifikasinya seperti apa. Jadi bisa dilihat secara langsung, juga ada beberapa, kita punya stereo microscope untuk bisa lihat lebih detail. Mungkin ada beberapa indikasi seperti cut mark atau mungkin toponomi seperti itu. Jadi kalau memang ada pertanyaan, bisa langsung bertanya sambil dijelaskan oleh Profesor Toma. Silakan, Toma. Langsung ke depan aja, Mas, Mbak. Yuk, kita di depan yuk daripada duduk terus. Langsung. Jangan malu-malu. Gak gigit, gak gigit. Dekat-dekat. Apa lu tuh?
With a long muzzle like that, along with very narrow interorbital space like that. And on the top, see, you have a small depression here. So even when fragmentary, here you can easily identify it as a macaque. Okay, if you remember the face I've shown you earlier on of Lutung, the nose was, the muzzle was short, much shorter. The interorbital space was much larger. The orbites were rounded, and without this mark here. Okay, so this is clearly macaque. So even and we do have in archaeological sites sometimes just the eyebrow here. You can easily know it's macaque. Whatever the part is preserved, you can know it's macaque. Okay. Most of the time, teeth are preserved, and that's quite easy as well. Meaning that teeth, just like you can see here, are on the lower jaw. They are not linked by crests like they are on Lutung. On Lutung, you would have crest, which would be linking cusp 2 by 2, right? This is not the case here. This is macaque. And you can see that the chin here is receding. This is also macaque. In Lutung, it won't be like that. So it's quite short and long, while in Lutung, it's higher. So you can easily differentiate them. So what is that then? If this is macaque, what is that? What do you think? Is it a primate? First question. Any guess? You don't know? Sama rien. Sama. Kelosama, macaque rien. So if it's the same, it's a macaque as well. So what are the differences? It's just that this is a juvenile. So that's the same, but a juvenile. But that is macaque as well. You can see the large, long incisors. You would not have that on colobs. So you have the same large incisor. This is macaque as well, but a juvenile one. So that's the same. Okay? So the differences you see that, it's just based on the age. But that's the same species. So we do not have colob here. Terus ada banyak. So now you'll know. Okay, and here we have some bones. Some of them have been worked, obviously. See, a pointed bone like that. That's exactly the same I've shown you. Or the ones you have here. Obviously, it has been worked, shaped into a pointing bone. That's a fibula. That's bone there. It has been polished, and you can see under the microscope. Yes. So you can see here micro striations like that. Do you see them? Those micro striations. That's what gives you the movement of polishing and makes it shiny. It looks shiny because it's micro polished like that. So these micro striations are clearly due to actions. See that? Yes? You see the lines here, the striations? It's clear? Okay. It's the same bone, huh? This is the most common. In Sanctorus, you have a lot of these ones. So that's the fibula, that's this bone there. And you can see clearly those striations. It is obviously worked. Do we have an unworked bone? They're all worked. Yeah. Here you don't have the striation because this end has not been worked. See, you see the difference? Here there are no striations. Is we have the extremity of the bone that is preserved. One part has been worked and one has not been worked. So we can easily identify it to the species and even what type of bone. Sometimes it's that worked that you don't really know what bone it was at first. It's unclear, but based on the dimensions, you can say it's fibula, but then of what species? It can be monkey, it can be something else. So it is too much transformed to be identified. And also what you have sometimes are concretions like that. So sediments that precipitate and glues naturally the surface of the bone. And therefore, you cannot identify it, the striation and the micro polish. Okay. Yeah, that's the problem. Here you don't see very much because the sediment still sticking on it. And if you remove it, you remove the upper surface, upper layer of the bone, and therefore you will lose the evidences of the modification. So that's a common problem we do have in our archaeological sites. So obviously from the outer surface, you know it has been worked, but if you look under the microscope, you don't know how it was worked, how it has been shaped like that. If it's exactly the same method as here or not. So if you scratch it, you will remove and lose the information. If you use some acid, you will lose the information as well. That's the problem. So you cannot do much with that.
I mean, it's been it's like a cut mark. In fact, it's because of the excavation. It's because the cleaning of the stone.
Yeah, you can see that easily. Here you have the natural color of the bone, and if this was ancient, it would have the same coloration with the same black dots, manganese, that would be inside the marks here, the cuts. Here it looks whitish, and therefore it's a different color. So it has been made posteriorly, and you see that the whitish is cutting all the other colors. So here you have a black patch of dots, and it's cut by the white. So this came after, and it's more recent. It's more recent and it's modern. So that was made by the excavator, and it's not a cut mark. Okay. Yes. Depends who excavates. Exactly. Okay. And sometimes you have several processes. So here the bone was split at first, and then it was worked. The outer surface was worked. So it depends what they want to obtain. Sometimes they can even hit the bone, so they can bend it. Okay. So you have several, I mean, you have a true strategy, a true chaîne opératoire with several steps, stages to obtain what they desired to obtain. And then the purpose of the final product, that's a big question. That's the discussion we had with Thomas Sukina this morning. I mean, we know how it looks like. We know how they made it. We can even identify sometimes the different steps to obtain it. But then what was the purpose of the tool? That's another question. Was it for sewing? Was it for projectile? Was it for whatever? Okay.
Kalau persebaran tulang sebagai ini dikonsumsikan ya karanya. Itu kalau misalnya mamalia besar mungkin aja dia kan, karena saya lihat deskripsi salah satu dosen saya, dia itu tersebar kayak di satu sisi itu cuma tulang bagian ini saja dan sisi lain itu ini saja. Sedangkan kan dari satu individu kan berbagai tulang tuh. Jadi indikasinya adalah mereka itu membagi-bagi bagian-bagian tubuh terhadap suatu komunitas-komunitas atau beberapa bagian. Nah di mamalia kecil tuh seperti itu juga atau bagaimana?
Well, we just have one species here, and then we don't have different types of and those are worked, so it's not that easy. But the same we've seen for the skull here. You can identify the species based on the different feature. You have the same for the postcranial. So for the rest of the skeleton. Well, this is all the same species. So, but here you have a joint, that's the elbow, okay? And the macaque spends more time on the ground compared to the collops that spend more time on the trees. And therefore they have a different adaptation. We are bipedal. Our skeleton is made for walking upright. Okay, same for them. This one spend time on the ground. It has a different skeleton with the one spending time on the trees, and that you can identify. That you can make the difference. This one was clearly arboreal. Okay, so it's most likely not the macaque. Okay, so you can identify that. So you can go to this kind of details and different, even if part has been modified, you can still identify the species based on that. Okay. Did I answer your question? Yes. We have no evidence for that. We have no evidence for this kind of sharing. As I've shown, all the skeletal part, the whole individual was brought back to the site. So for big animals, what they do is that they cannot carry everything. So they have to cut it and then bring some parts, the one they are interested in. Here they brought everything except for the hands. So here we cannot say they were selecting parts. Here we have no evidence of trampling, so stepping on the bones while in the sediments. But for trampling, you would have several striations in all the directions. For cut marks, you have few striations. They are large and they are oriented. So for trampling, it's like for a bone that would have been transported by water, would have a lot of striations, very fine, tiny. And at the end, when not under the microscope, it would look shiny, just like if it was polished as well. But it's a different process. Okay. When here we have a quite short chain operatoire. We don't have any evidence for burning, but we do have some here splitting. That's the case here. They split it and then they polished the end to transform it into a spatula here. So you have at least 2 steps of working of preparation of this this tool. Sometimes you have more. Yeah. You can see the working of the end, the spatula here. And you have the same here. So you can see that they reproduce the same type of bone all the time. So it's like industrial. They have one bone, they make it a certain way, same bone from another individual, same process. So here they all look the same bone, all look the same, different individuals. They're the same. So it's really a process. It's standardized. That's quite interesting for prehistoric times. Huh? This type of standardization that you do not find on stone tools, but they do have that on bone tools. And that's quite interesting for understanding those societies.
Stone tools as consider as a tools for making.
Maybe the stone tool is just an intermediate. That's the final product, and another final product would be vegetals, maybe, but that's a hypothesis. It's a debate. Well, those primates have long bones and thin bones. So if you want to make a small pointing tool and still large enough so you can handle it, primate bone is certainly better than a rodent. And it would require less time of working to make it that thin than an elephant bone or a pig bone, obviously. So I guess that can be also a reason why they chose primates over any other species, but that's just speculation.
Dari segi ukuran.
Umur, ya umur spesimen atau umur geologi?
Spesimen. Iya.
Umur spesimen untuk postcranian nggak tahu. Ini nggak tahu. The bones are already fused, so it's an adult. That's all I can say. So it's older than this one. That's all I can say. Same for here. But once it's fused, you cannot say anything anymore. So you just can say it's an adult or not. It's not like for teeth. Or for skull remains, if the skull is well preserved, then you can say more or less the age. But the best are teeth. No, there was no selection for female. It was there were more females because naturally there are more females in nature. So there was no choice. And in here we don't know if it's male or female. We cannot determine the age nor the sex here. But well, you have different sizes, obviously. Some are smaller than the others. So then if you measure all of them and you plot them, you would see if they overlap or not. If they don't overlap, maybe you can suspect sex difference. But be careful, macaques males are larger than females, but it's not always the case in monkeys. For example, gibbons, females are larger than males. Orangutan, males are larger than females. You have a strong sexual dimorphism. The thing is that those monkeys live in groups, several males, several females, so they fight for reproduction. And that's why you have sexual dimorphism. That's in orangutan, they live alone. So they have to fight as well when they encounter. In gibbons, they live in couples, just like humans. So there's no sexual dimorphism. There's no fighting. It's equilibrium.
Andri. Oke. Ada tanyaan? No?
Ini bisa capture nggak nih mikroskopnya? Buat foto.
Tergantung tujuannya sih, kalau misalnya kayak Toma gitu kan, dia lebih fokus spesifik ke taxonomy, lebih spesifik ke taxonomy, lebih spesifik ke modifikasinya seperti apa, determinasi seks di spesimennya. Kalau saya kan lebih ke teknologinya, mungkin lebih ke channel operator buatnya, dipakainya buat apa, jejak pemakaiannya seperti apa. Jadi makanya tergantung tujuan-tujuannya masing-masing gitu kan. Kalau emang analisanya kita bisa pakai alat yang sama, apakah mikroskop seperti ini atau dynolite seperti ini yang lebih simpel dibawa ke lapangan daripada yang harus desktop ini. Tapi dua-duanya bekerja dengan tujuannya yang sama, ininya seperti itu. Atau mau yang lebih detail lagi, kalau emang pakai perbesaran yang lebih besar lagi, bisa pakai optical binocular yang mikroskop yang ada di lab yang biasa kita lakukan, bisa perbesaran sampai 100-200. Itu sih sebetulnya tujuannya mau lihat apanya dulu sih sebetulnya. Walaupun alatnya yang kita pakai sama, spesimen yang kita analisis juga sama-sama tulang, cuman kan tujuan kita mau apa yang mau kita ketahui dan spesialisasi si penelitinya juga kan berbeda-beda. Apa yang saya lihat, apa yang Toma lihat belum tentu saya bisa lihat. Kayak sex dimorphism, saya nggak tahu tuh yang kayak gitu-gitu. Cuman untuk hal yang lain saya bisa analisis, jadi bisa kolaborasi di situ sih. Intinya masing-masing punya tujuan analisis dan apa yang mau kalian tahu sih sebetulnya di situ sih kalau untuk analisis pendekatan ininya gitu. Ada lagi? Kalau alatnya sih simple ya, dynolite, tinggal difoto perbesaran berapa, nanti bisa diedit dan segala rupa. Atau stereo mikroskop. Standarnya sih biasanya kita pakai stereo mikroskop itu karena kita tidak butuh perbesaran yang sangat besar. Kecuali kayak untuk useware kita mau lihat polish, kita mau lihat kayak striasi yang lebih detail kecil, ya itu mungkin perbesarannya lebih besar. Cuman standarnya kalau selama ini ya dengan perbesaran sampai 50 kali itu sudah cukup. Dan itu bisa digunakan pakai stereo mikroskop atau pakai dynolite. Gitu. Lagi? Nah, bisa langsung ke Bapak Toma.
How they did the polish by using what kind of
He's a archaeologist.
Sebagian besar sih, I mean usually they use nutter stone, like sandstone. They have coarse surface. The finer surface is the best. The best is your hand. I mean, if you want to make a very fine, shiny, because if you want to try to compare the process of polishing the stone A's, or in Papua, there's several steps. First is using the coarse one, and then began to using a very fine one, and then the end is using your hand because you want to like shiny, very fine, and yeah. Well, I mean, there's several process. I mean, if you want to have a very fine one, or just like a similar surface, just like that. So yeah. But the easiest one is using a coarse sandstone, probably, or maybe it's just like that.
As Pat Thomas Lustigna was saying this morning, one should look at residue if there are any left on the surface. So for now, we don't know, but we will know thanks to you. I know.
Some traces. We can see it by using, for example, scanning electron microscopy, for example, for higher magnification, so we could see more, the chemical mapping or more smooth surface or
Yep. Absolutely.
Usually they burn. They want to like not enforce, but make it harder. So they burn first and then they polish afterwards. Otherwise, it just destroyed. Usually because bone are sometimes bone are very fragile. So if you put pressure more and then it just break, or maybe you scratch it and then it becomes uneven. So usually they burn first and then it make more solid and then they polish afterwards. But I don't know. Biar lebih kuat, lebih mensolidify si tulangnya. Biasanya gitu. Lagi? Ah. Yeah, it just transforms the it is. But yeah, I mean, it call it heat treatment. I mean, in stone tools also they use heat treatment just like that, just try to change the chemical on the stone tool. It becomes more easier to nap, or it will be easier to like to follow the ridge of the stone tools, and the surface are more smoother. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. It is. Ada pertanyaan lagi. Kalau hewan peliharaan zaman sekarang seperti anjing dan kucing belum ditemukan fosilnya bersama manusia purba? Anjing dan kucing, oh it comes afterwards. Why we didn't find cats, dogs?
For older periods, domestication came later. So came about 3,000, 3,500 years ago. And the species domesticated, at least for cats, are coming from mainland. And for dogs, slightly from dingo somewhere. For rooster, it could have been in Southeast Asia, according to geneticists. For buffalo, it was from mainland, etc., etc. So those domesticated species came afterwards. Some could have been domesticated in the islands, but most were not, and they were imported. So they are not part of the natural fauna of the of islands of Southeast Asia for most of them.
Masih ada pertanyaan lagi ya? Kalau tidak, ya? Yes.
Tadi katanya ditemukan di Songkeplek aja ya itu, yang makaka sama yang lutung tadi. Nah, itu tuh mereka tuh nggak bisa defense dirinya sendiri apa gimana ya? Soalnya kan banyak ditemukan dia juga diburu terus gitu kan. Perlindungan dirinya apa nggak ada atau gimana gitu?
Niatnya.
You have the mic.
Saya bingung jawabnya. Ya mungkin karena mereka prefer tetap itu dimakan, kenapa bisa ketemu dan mereka mungkin diburu dan mungkin populasinya banyak di situ. Kalau how to defense ya animal behavior ya biasanya sih mereka
Well, if they live in groups, it's because while one is eating, is feeding, there's one that is watching for predators. We call that the caller. So as soon as he sees a predator, like humans, he calls for the others and they all run away. So that's the strategy, the defense strategy. You do have some primates. You have one species of primate, the nocturnal one, the tiny one in Java, but that's unique among primates that does have poison. That's the slow loris, Nycticebus kokang. The name in kokang, yeah? So the kokang does have poison. So if it bites you, it has poison on the elbow. So it licks the elbow, and then if it bites you, so that's the defense for the kokang, not for them. That's unique among primates. So for them, no, they just they have a collar, and that's why they live in groups.
Cukup ya? Oke, terima kasih. Saya ucapkan terima kasih kepada Tomai Ngiko untuk sharing pengetahuannya dan segalanya. Terima kasih juga buat para peserta seminar workshop hari ini yang hadir secara langsung ataupun yang luring. Sebelum saya tutup, mungkin akan ada closing remarks dari Kepala Pusat Riset Arkeometri Pak Sofwan Norwidi. Mungkin saya persilakan Pak Sofwan.
Terima kasih Mas Anton. Jangan lupa setelah closing remark nanti kita ada foto group. Karena ya, because ya yang sebelumnya lupa ya kita ya. Ya sekali lagi saya ucapkan terima kasih. Merci beaucoup Mas Thomas. Ya untuk kuliah hari ini baik yang hadir melalui Zoom dan YouTube tadi pagi sampai sekarang masih ada mungkin ya. Dan teman-teman yang hadir secara luring di sini dari mahasiswa dari UI, dari UNUD, kemudian teman-teman dari museum, teman-teman dari arkeometri. Semoga bermanfaat untuk kita semua. Kemudian juga jadi ini beberapa workshop yang kita lakukan belakangan ini, yang dilakukan setiap bulan ya. Bulan ini kita ada Archaeozoology, non-human primate. Bulan sebelumnya kita ada artefak batu ya, dari Sydney, Chris Clarkson bulan lalu. Sebelumnya juga ada dari Gert van den Berg dari Wollongong, workshop Proboscideae. Ya bulan kita mengadakan workshop. Bulan depan kemungkinan kita masih tunggu, kelihatannya akan ada juga workshop tentang kalau tidak dating Pak François, mungkin nanti ada Archaeology juga lagi, mungkin stegodon mungkin ya, antara itu. Ya banyak hewan-hewan, tapi juga kadang dating, mungkin kalau Pak François sudah ada waktu, sudah dibentuk. Di-combine boleh, Archaeology. Ya tadi kita usahakan setiap bulannya ada kuliah seperti ini, karena memang juga ini adalah dalam rangka persiapan seperti tadi pagi Pak Heri sampaikan, kita akan ada satu platform penelitian jangka panjang yang multi perspektif, tidak hanya melibatkan arkeolog yang ada di BRIN, tapi juga membuka kesempatan mahasiswa untuk belajar di sana melalui Merdeka Belajar, Kampus Merdeka, juga membuka kesempatan degree bariset baik untuk peneliti BRIN maupun yang di luar BRIN, di universitas dan di museum, dimanapun lah stakeholder kita. Jadi ini memang kita buat dalam persiapan ke sana. Nantinya mudah-mudahan setelah akhir tahun ini, ya Juli itu, kita sudah bisa mulai platform RIM Bumiayu, di Bumiayu dan sekitar Semedo. Nanti kita juga membuka kesempatan, peluang untuk researcher baik dalam dan luar negeri, profesor dari dalam dan luar negeri seperti Mas Thomas. Mungkin nanti kami undang sebagai profesor fellow jika ada waktu, Mas Thomas. Nanti sekitar 1-3 bulan nanti di Indonesia membimbing teman-teman yang degree baris, yang sedang degree. Jadi untuk supervisi talent-talent muda peneliti dari Indonesia. Jadi seperti itu. Kita akan undang dari manapun, baik profesor dari dalam negeri maupun luar negeri. Mungkin dari Belanda, dari Australia, nanti kita juga undang semua. Ya mungkin kira-kira begitu. Nanti silahkan teman-teman yang ingin berpartisipasi di RIM Bumiayu, kita persilahkan, kita buka kesempatan sebesar-besarnya. Dan semoga kegiatan-kegiatan kita termasuk hari ini bisa bermanfaat bagi kita semua. Akhirul kalam, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih sekali kami sampaikan.